you are considering investing in an octave mandolin, or maybe you're just curious about the instrument, here are a couple things you should know, specifically with the differences between the octave mandolin and the standard mandolin. In this video, I'm going to break down some of the similarities, some of the differences, and how that affects the way that we use these instruments. Major difference between these two instruments is obviously size. There is a huge size difference. The average scale length of a standard mandolin is about 14 inches. It can range anywhere between 13 to 16 inches. And then for the octave mandolin, the average scale length is about 20 inches. And also that can vary from around 19 to 22 inches. So there is a big difference in size. The octave mandolin is still very playable. I can still play chords. I can still play melody. You can still do everything that you want to do on the octave mandolin, but you will have to change the way that you approach the instrument because of that size difference. The second thing that a lot of people wonder about is how this instrument is tuned. How is the octave mandolin tuned? Well, good news for you if you play the mandolin. It's tuned the exact same as the mandolin. So that means from the lowest string to the highest string, it's G, D, A, E. It's the exact same. That is the standard tuning for the octave mandolin. That's how I tune my octave mandolin. So if you ever see me playing my octave mandolin, it's always going to be with that tuning, at least up until this point. I have heard of other people testing out different tunings with the instrument. I've heard of people doing G, D, A, D. I've heard of also of people tuning the lower two strings in octaves. So they would do a low G, high G, low D, high D, and then just your A and E. So there are different variations, but the standard tuning for the instrument is G, D, A, E, same exact thing as the mandolin. The third similarity slash difference is the tone of the octave mandolin. So the octave mandolin has a lot more sustain than the mandolin. It has kind of a more melancholy, kind of a darker tone to it, and I personally think it sounds amazing with minor keys. I think it really lends itself to more minor chord progressions. Of course, you can do major chord progressions also, but it does have just overall kind of a darker tone. Of course, that will depend on the actual instrument that you have, and also it's just a louder instrument. It sounds more in the range of the guitar, so it does have kind of a fuller sound to it, whereas the mandolin is just much brighter. It's a very bright instrument. The octave mandolin is much darker. So how do these differences affect the way that we play the instrument and affect the way that we use the instrument? So one of the main things that we kind of have to be a little bit more creative with is fingering. Fingering on the octave mandolin is kind of just a free-for-all. You do what works for your hands. You're creative. You figure out what feels comfortable to you. With the standard mandolin, there is a set fingering that most people abide by, but with the octave mandolin, there's not. I mean, you just kind of do what works for you. And so, as a little demonstration for me, if I was playing the mandolin and I was just playing a regular G major scale, I would finger it like this. I would do open, 1, 2, 3, kind of like that. And I can do that on this instrument, but my third finger is quite a reach and I kind of have to move my frame around. So if I was trying to go fast, it would be a little bit hard, and for me it's not the most comfortable. So what I like to do on this instrument is I'll do open, 1, 3, 4, like that. And I will say I do use my fourth finger on this instrument quite a bit, so that might be something that you kind of have to get used to. Don't be afraid of your fourth finger. Don't be afraid of it. It can do great things. It just needs a little extra work. But that is kind of the way that I would finger this instrument in first position. And I have seen men that have bigger hands than I do, and they are able to play and reach things that I can't. I will never be able to reach some of the things that they do. So if you do have bigger hands, then go for it. Do whatever feels comfortable to you. Play those big chords, you know, do the normal fingering. But maybe if you're a person that has smaller hands, then you might have to just rearrange rearrange the way that you finger things. Chording on this instrument is very different from the mandolin, very different from chording on the mandolin, and I'd say that might be one of the biggest differences between the two is the way that I play chords. I do a lot of I do a lot of voicings on this instrument that I don't do on mandolin, simply because of the nature of this instrument, how it does have more sustain and it's able to have that louder supporting sound with fewer notes in a chord. And so I really try to utilize open strings, open voicings as much as possible. There are just some things that you can't exactly play on this, like at least for my hands, I can't play the chop chord. There's just no way. So you just have to be creative and find other ways to get the desired tone that you're going for. I wouldn't say that this instrument does not provide that kind of chop backbeat that the mandolin does. It's not really the best for that. You can definitely chop on this instrument, but I really like trying to keep it kind of more open and a full accompaniment. And if you're wanting kind of a more bluegrassy chop type of feel, the mandolin might be best for that. So we won't get into all of the details right now of the specific chord voicings that I use and how those are different. I am going to make a separate video about that, but it is different and you do have to be a little bit more creative. So with all of that being said about the chords, this instrument is actually really great for providing accompaniment, again, because it does have a fuller tone, has more sustain, it's a little bit lower. It is great, especially if you want to sing on top of it. And as someone who does like to sing a lot and songwriting, I love using this for songwriting, for worship leading. That is something that I love using the octave for. And I think not that you can't use the mandolin to accompany yourself, because you totally can. However, the mandolin just by itself does not make a great accompanying instrument because of the range. However, this instrument sounds amazing just by itself. You could just have this and sing, you know, for multiple songs and it's going to sound great. You're going to be able to get that low supporting kind of, you can do bass walk-ups and things with this instrument, and it just sounds more complete than if you were just playing the mandolin and singing. This kind of goes without saying, but because of the size of this instrument, you're not going to be able to play quite as fast as you would on a mandolin. Now that said, especially if you're higher up on the neck or you're using open strings, you can definitely still get some speed with this instrument. It's just not going to be at the same level as it would be on the mandolin. And using a capo is something that I do a lot with this instrument, because even if you capo it up a fret or maybe 4 or 5 frets, that much does give you, it makes the frets a lot smaller. And actually, even if you capo it, you kind of put it more in the range of a mandola, which also sounds really great for accompanying. So that's something that don't be afraid to capo your octave mandolin. Sometimes I feel like that's kind of looked down upon, but especially with this instrument, it can actually really enhance the way that you play it. And especially if you want to do a flat key, or I know for me, I love singing in the key of E flat, but E flat is not the best key for this instrument, so I will definitely use a capo to make it easier on myself. So to give you guys a little bit of a comparison, I'm going to play a part of Arkansas Traveler on this instrument, and then I'm going to play the exact same thing on the mandolin. That way you can hear the difference between the two. Now, with all of that being said, if you are thinking about getting an octave mandolin, I 100% recommend. I think that you will love it, especially if you are someone that already plays the mandolin and loves that. You are gonna love this one probably just as much. So yes, I definitely think that it is worth it. It does take a little bit of a learning curve, but especially if you're someone that already plays the mandolin, you're not gonna have any problem picking this up, and I think you will love it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button down below. That really helps me out. Feel free to leave a comment down below of ideas for future videos or just any questions that you might have about this instrument. And yeah, I enjoy creating this type of content, so make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss another video from me.